Secrets in St Barts Part 4. Chapter 15, Storm over the island. The sky broke open at dawn. Heavy clouds, bloated and grey, stampeded across the horizon like wild horses. The wind howled through the cliffs, ripping through the palms, bending trees like they were made of paper. Gusts slammed against shutters and sent waves crashing in violent arcs below the villa. By midday, the announcement came. Hurricane warning. Category 3. No ferries. No flights. No escape. St Barts was on lockdown. Inside the villa, the storm settled over the estate like a vengeful spirit. The windows were secured. Candles were lit. Staff rushed to store outdoor furniture, reinforce doors, and stock wine and water like the apocalypse was coming. It was just not the kind they expected. Camille moved through the house like a shadow, heart pounding behind every breath. After the secret cove, after Luck's promise, everything had shifted. But the storm didn't just trap them physically, it cornered the truth. She could feel it building. Pressure. Whispers. The way the Delacroix family looked at her when they thought she wasn't looking. They knew. Maybe not the whole story. But enough. The confrontation came during dinner, or what passed for dinner. Everyone was gathered in the drawing room for candlelit charcuterie and storm wine, as Juliet mockingly called it. The wind screamed beyond the windows. Lightning cracked through the sky. Luck sat beside Camille for the first time in public. It was small. A silent, deliberate rebellion. But it was noticed. Juliet's glass of Bordeaux clinked sharply against the edge of the marble table. Luck's father, Charles, cleared his throat with performative weight. And then, Luck reached for Camille's hand. Casual. But not hidden. Not this time. Silence sliced through the room. And then, the explosion. "You arrogant little boy," Charles spat, standing abruptly. "You would disgrace this family publicly now. You couldn't even wait for the ink to dry on your grandmother's will." Luck stood too. Calm. Ready. "I'm not hiding anymore." Juliet rose slowly, like a queen about to go to war. "Not hiding," she hissed. "You're parading her." Camille tried to move, to step away, to shrink. But Luck held her hand. "No more secrets," he said, louder now. "No more pretending." "Pretending what?" Juliet snarled. "That this," she motioned violently between Luck and Camille, "is anything more than a fantasy. A summer distraction while the chef plays Cinderella and you play savior." Juliet, Luck warned, voice low. But she was already spiraling. "You think you'll last, Luck? With her? You'll wake up bored. Embarrassed. Regretful. And you'll come crawling back to what you threw away." Camille finally pulled her hand free. "Enough," she said, softly. "All of you." Everyone turned to her. Even the wind seemed to pause. "I never asked for any of this," she continued. "Not your name. Not your fortune. Not your war." She looked at Luck. Her voice broke. "Just you. And to the room, I never wanted to be someone's scandal." Another voice rose, unexpectedly. Luck's younger sister, Sabine, standing from the back of the room, arms crossed. "Maybe he finally does want to choose something real." Charles shot her a glare. "This isn't your concern." Sabine shrugged. "Maybe not. But at least he's not lying anymore." The lightning split the sky again, thunder booming behind the windows. A vase toppled from a shelf. Someone screamed. The power flickered. Outside, the hurricane was a monster. Inside, everything that had been held back, for weeks, for years, had finally come crashing down. As the wind howled and glass trembled, Camille fled the room, barefoot, eyes hot, heart in free fall. Luck followed. But the storm swallowed everything. Even them. Chapter 16, The Betrayal Vote. The storm had not passed. By morning, it had only grown more vicious. Sheets of rain lashed against the windows, winds moaned through the shutters like a grieving ghost. Branches littered the villa's marble terraces. The sea, once serene, was now violent and grey, throwing its rage against the cliffs. Inside, the air was colder. Not from the hurricane, but from what had happened the night before. Camille hadn't slept. She'd returned to her small room after the confrontation, soaked in more than rain, shame, disbelief, exhaustion. She'd stripped off her wet clothes, wrapped herself in a blanket, and stared at the ceiling while thunder rolled above. She knew it was only a matter of time before the axe fell. She just didn't think it would come so cleanly. It happened just after noon. A knock on her door. Not Luck. Not Sabine. But Charles Delacroix himself. He didn't step inside. He didn't need to. His voice was sharp, cold, efficient, the voice of a man who knew how to destroy with words alone. Miss Durand, you've compromised the privacy of this household and endangered its reputation. Camille stood slowly, heart thudding. My son's lapse in judgment will be dealt with. But your employment here is terminated, effective immediately. She blinked. A car will take you to the harbor as soon as it's safe to drive. You'll receive a severance. Generous, considering. She stepped toward the door, face pale. You can't. I can, Miss Durand. And I have. His eyes narrowed. You are no longer welcome on this property. Do not contact my son again. And then, almost as an afterthought. Juliet agrees with this decision. As do the lawyers. He turned to leave. One step. Two. Then stopped. You're not the first woman he's risked his future for. But you will be the last. The door closed. Silence. Camille's knees nearly buckled. It didn't matter that Luck had promised her everything. It didn't matter that he'd sworn love in the moonlight. Because in the daylight, the Empire had spoken. And it had chosen Juliet. Less than an hour later, her things were packed. Again. This time not by her, but by the villa staff. No eye contact. No farewells. Her knives, wrapped in cloth. Her dresses, folded with clinical precision. At the front gate, a black town car waited, engine running beneath the storm's roar. Rain pounded the pavement. Thunder cracked the sky. And inside the villa, somewhere behind those glass walls, Luck hadn't come for her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. She stepped out into the storm, her coat billowing, hair drenched within seconds. She climbed into the car. The door shut. Just like that. She was gone. Chapter 17, Back to Nothing. The air in Paris was sharp. The kind that cuts through coats and memories alike. Grey skies hung low over the city like bruises that never healed, and the Seine ran black with winter. Gone were the sun-drenched terraces and infinity pools. Gone were the sea breezes and designer perfume. In their place, metal, cold, routine. Camille stepped off the train at Gare de Lyon with 2 suitcases, No escort, and no one waiting. The first thing she did was breathe. Then she kept walking. Paris hadn't changed. But she had. Once, Camille had arrived in this city wide-eyed and hungry, bursting with ambition and knives wrapped in velvet. She'd spent years proving herself in kitchens where chefs shouted and burned and earned their scars in silence. But now, she wasn't the girl with fire in her eyes. She was the woman whispered about in les coulisses, the back rooms. The one who'd gone to St Barts and slept her way into scandal. The one whose name was now met with a raised eyebrow or a disappointed sigh. Not a chef. A headline. She found work in the 11th arrondissement. Not at a chateau. Not in a Michelin-starred restaurant. But in a cramped, smoky bistro tucked between a laundromat and a pawn shop. It didn't even have a name on the door, just a chalkboard sign that read menu du jour and a bell that rang when you opened it too hard. They paid in cash. They didn't ask questions. And they needed someone who could handle the grill on double shifts and stay silent when the kitchen pipes hissed from the heat. Camille said yes. Her new uniform was different. No white coat. No embroidery on the chest. Just a black t-shirt, an apron that always smelled like oil, and burn marks on her forearms that no one cared about. She prepped duck confit in the mornings, flipped lamb burgers in the afternoons, and washed her own pans at closing. Every night, she walked home through puddles and broken sidewalks, past neon lights and street musicians, to a one-room apartment where the radiator only worked if you kicked it twice and prayed. She didn't check the news. Not anymore. But sometimes, in the corner of a magazine at the Tabac, she'd see him. Luck. Pictured beside Juliet. Or alone. Or arriving at some gala, jaw tight, eyes unreadable. Once, she caught a headline. Delacroix engagement back on, power couple reunites in Paris. She didn't buy it. But she didn't not believe it either. One night, after a particularly brutal double shift, Camille sat alone behind the bistro, cigarette burning between her fingers, unlit, but comfortingly warm. The alley was narrow, damp, lit by a single flickering light bulb. From inside, she could still hear the dishwasher clanking and the distant hum of customers drinking cheap red wine. She looked down at her hands, blistered, calloused. Not the hands of a mistress. Not the hands of a muse. But the hands of a survivor. And as the wind picked up, rustling through the trash bins and smoke-stained bricks, Camille whispered to the cold, "I'll build again." Chapter 18, Luck's Cage. The tuxedo fit perfectly. Of course it did, it was hand-stitched in Florence, custom-tailored for Luc Delacroix's shoulders, his frame, his image. Even the buttons gleamed like obligation. Luc stood before a gold-framed mirror in the powder room of the Hotel de Crillon, adjusting his boatie with mechanical precision. The gala was already in full swing downstairs, a glittering fundraiser for some tech sustainability initiative his father chaired. He could hear the champagne laughter, the classical quartet, the murmurs of men who still wore pocket watches and spoke in euros, not emotions. And below it all, the ticking inside his head. Juliet's voice drifted through the cracked door. "Darling, they're waiting." She always called him darling in public. Never Luck. Never love. He emerged from the powder room like a prince returning from war. Juliet stood at the top of the marble staircase, dressed in a gold silk gown that cascaded down her body like poured wealth. Her earrings glittered, two perfect teardrop diamonds. Her smile was painted and precise. But her eyes, sharp as ever. She took his arm, nails like polished glass. "We're late," she whispered through her teeth. "Smile." And so he did. Cameras flashed. Photographers lined the velvet ropes. Journalists leaned forward. Fashion columnists jotted down his cufflink brand. Delacroix returns to the spotlight after St Barts drama. Luc and Juliette, the golden couple, shines again in Paris. Scandal behind them, legacy ahead. He smiled for every photo. Touched her back when the cameras clicked. Tilted his head just right. Held her hand like it meant something. The performance was flawless. Inside the ballroom, crystal chandeliers shimmered above them like frozen fireworks. Waiters in white gloves passed silver trays of foie gras crostini and saffron martinis. CEOs toasted with polished grins. Heiresses complimented Juliette's gown in rehearsed tones. Luc stood beside her, saying all the right things. "Thank you for coming. Yes, the family is stronger than ever. Juliette and I appreciate your support." He said the words like prayers to a god he no longer believed in. When the dancing began, he excused himself. He didn't want to touch her anymore. Not even for show. He found solitude on the balcony, where the sounds of the gala were muffled by glass and distance. The city lights blinked far below. And somewhere out there, in a tiny kitchen, or maybe in the shadow of an alley, was the only woman who had ever looked at him and not seen an empire. Just a man. Just Luc. He pulled a cigarette from a gold case someone had gifted him last year. He didn't smoke. But he wanted the burn. He wanted something. Juliette found him minutes later, her heels clicking like warnings. "I told you not to disappear." He didn't turn. "I'm here. You looked bored out there." "I am bored." She laughed, but it was hollow. "Poor little prince," she murmured, brushing invisible lint from his lapel. "You got everything you wanted." He looked at her then. Not cruel. Not kind. Just empty. "No," he said. "I got everything you wanted." She said nothing. Because deep down, she knew. This wasn't love. This wasn't partnership. This was strategy in designer packaging. Luc turned back to the city lights. His jaw tightened. His fists clenched. And for the first time since the night in the cove, he whispered her name into the wind. Camille. Chapter 19, A Letter in Wine Stains. It was a Tuesday, grey and quiet. Rain had been falling in Paris since morning, the kind of endless drizzle that turned the sidewalks into mirrors and made even the most glamorous city feel heavy. Camille stood at the prep counter in the back of the bistro, rolling her shoulders between chopping onions, her apron already stained with beet juice and lemon zest. The orders had slowed. Lunch rush had passed. Dishes clattered in the sink, and the radio played a sad Edith Piaf ballad in the background. Just another day in the grind of starting over. Until the bell above the door rang. And the past walked in. It wasn't Luc. But the man was sharply dressed, foreign. He wore a navy trench coat, expensive shoes too clean for this part of town. He looked out of place in the cracked tile and grease-stained walls of the bistro. He didn't speak when he entered, just looked around, nodded once, then approached the counter. Camille wiped her hands, wary. "Can I help you?" He didn't answer. He reached into his coat pocket and produced a small envelope, cream-colored, slightly crumpled, smudged with what looked like red wine. He held it out. "For you." Camille stared. Then took it. There was no stamp. No return address. Just her name on the front in sharp, slanted handwriting she hadn't seen in weeks. Camille. Her heart stuttered. The man tipped his head, then turned and left, disappearing back into the rain like a dream she wasn't sure she'd had. She looked down at the envelope. Hands trembling. Fingers numb. And then, slowly, she opened it. The letter was handwritten. One page. Inked in blue. The edges were wrinkled, as if it had been folded and unfolded many times. A faint red stain, wine, definitely, had bled through the corner. She read it once. Then again. Then again. Her throat closed. Her breath caught. The words weren't long. But they didn't need to be. Camille, I chose wrong. I thought legacy would save me. I thought loyalty meant silence. But I wake up every day tasting your name and wondering how I became a man I no longer recognize. You were the only truth I ever knew. And I destroyed it. If there's still a piece of you that believes in what we were, wait for me. I'm coming back. Luck. The letter slipped from her hands. She sat down. Hard. Right on the kitchen crate beside the crates of endives and butter lettuce, in the middle of a sticky tile floor that smelled like rosemary and burnt oil, and she wept. Silently. Not because she was weak. But because hope was the most dangerous ingredient of all. Outside, the rain softened. Inside, something cracked open, not like glass, but like soil. And in that fragile space, something began to bloom. Chapter 20, Juliet's Final Gambit. Paris glistened under a fresh snowfall. The rooftops were dusted in sugar-white powder, and the Seine moved slower now, thick with winter. But beneath the city's serene facade, a storm brewed, not of wind or weather, but of power, legacy, and desperation. Juliet sat in the back seat of a chauffeured car parked outside Place Vendôme, her phone glowing with headlines. The Delacroix wedding was officially news. She had made sure of it. Wedding of the century, Delacroix heir to marry Juliette Moreau in Versailles affair. Exclusive, guest list includes French royalty, Hollywood elite, and European billionaires. Confirmed, Chanel to design couture bridal gown for Juliette Moreau. Juliet scrolled through the articles with surgical precision, her manicured fingers swiping slowly as her lips curled into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She had leaked everything. The date. The venue. The designer. The cake tasting. Even the rumored private concert by an A-list pop star. Not because she was excited. Because she was daring him. Daring luck to defy her. Publicly. This wasn't a wedding announcement. It was a declaration of war. Earlier that week, Luck had missed 2 press dinners. He had cancelled one private tasting with their wedding planner and failed to respond to a bridal lookbook she sent. He was pulling away, slowly, almost cowardly, like someone trying to back out of a spotlight he'd never wanted to stand in. But Juliet knew better. Luck wouldn't just run. Not without consequences. Not without risk. So she raised the stakes. She leaned back in her seat, the interior of the car scented like Chanel No. 5 and determination. Across from her sat a PR agent in all black, tapping rapidly on an iPad. "Are you sure?" the agent asked. "Once it's out there, it's hard to walk back." Juliet didn't blink. "Luck can walk back," she said coldly. "But I'll make sure the entire world is watching when he does." In the public's eye, she was flawless. The bride of the decade. The fashion darling, the legacy match, the woman who weathered a scandal and emerged triumphant in gold stilettos. But beneath the couture, Juliet was burning. She could feel him slipping, like sand through silk gloves. And if she was going to lose him, she'd make sure he bled for it. Not quietly. Not gently. Loud. Lavish. Legendary. Back in the car, she looked down at the invitation mock-up. Ivory embossed cardstock. Gold foil. A floral crest that intertwined the Delacroix and Moyo names like a royal lineage. She ran her finger across the raised ink. Send it to Vogue, she said. And the Times. And Forbes. A pause. And leak it to the gossip blogs. Let them feast. Somewhere, in a flat in the 11th arrondissement, Camille was still breathing. That was enough to keep Juliet fighting. Because Juliet didn't fight for love. She fought for legacy. And she never, ever lost. That's the end of this part, but trust me, the next one is even more thrilling. We drop fresh episodes every day, so don't miss out. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned, you won't want to miss what's coming next.
Thanks for listening to Billionaire Romance Stories, where love meets luxury in the most unexpected places. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and drop a comment. We love hearing your favorite twists and favorite theories. And don't forget to ring that bell, because in this world of yachts, secrets, and luxurious romance, the next story is always one click away.